Hello aspirants, looking at editorials for 2nd November 2016. The first editorial in the Hindu newspaper today is questions about an encounter. So this is regarding again the Simi under trials, 8 men who were encountered by the Bhopal police. The editorial actually questions that how can under trials be called terrorists because they were not convicted, means there were charges framed against them that was being prosecuted in the court of law. The court of law had not declared them guilty and they were not convicted. So first of all, how can people be framed as terrorists without charges being proved against them? And again, how can unarmed people be encountered when the police has no threat from them? So that too mortal, means they have been killed. It is brutal encounter which took place. So the footage which has come out through the video also shows that it is alleged to be a fake encounter. So that is the whole thing. The government is also not ready to undertake a trial. Even they want to undertake a trial on the jailbreak, which of course is essential. So all those aspects are again covered here, what we discussed in news also, that Supreme Court stand is clear in encounter cases, especially on fake encounters. It says that such police officers should be hanged to death. They should be given death penalty, as should be a rarest of the rare case, fake encounters. And also it says that every encounter should be investigated. So an independent investigation is also essential. This is a Supreme Court judgment in 2014, but the state government is not ready to it. It says that there should be unquestioning acceptance from all quarters about rule of law and human rights being upheld. They should not question the government, they should not question the army, they should not question the police forces. So rather than accepting an independent investigation and restoring the faith of the public, the government says don't criticize the police, don't criticize the government, accept that it was an encounter. The police have acted in good faith. So that is the case which we see in today's India. Next editorial is schools out in Kashmir. So this is again regarding the issue in Kashmir. We saw yesterday again Jammu and Kashmir High Court has also said, taking a suo motu cognizance, that all schools in Jammu and Kashmir have to be opened. So even in today's news we saw even in Jammu region, schools near the border have been closed, and in Jammu and Kashmir within the state the problem is still faced. The protests are still going on and the separatist leaders still continue to hold their sway, and people are suffering, tourism is suffering, economy is suffering, students are suffering. They have lost so many days of school and there are exams which have to be conducted. So how all this would take place? The people should take things in their hands now, and sense should prevail even amongst the separatists, and the government should also come forth. It has to give away something to ensure that peace prevails in this region. So that is what is seen. Even the separatists, the editorial says, have not condemned the burning of schools which we have seen. 27 schools in Jammu and Kashmir have been burnt, but then they have not come down sternly criticizing about this incident. So that is also highlighted. So let's see, resumption of the rhythms of normal life is essential to end this disruption. Something has to give, so some compromise is essential. The people of Kashmir need a break from this long and tragic season of protest, shutdown and curfews. So process has to start now. So these are the two editorials. Next we look at the question bank. The first question is, the central government has asked states to pass their own land acquisition acts in view of its inability to amend the Central Land Acquisition Act of 2013. Is this constitutionally permissible? Discuss. So this is regarding the Land Acquisition Act of 2013, which was passed by the former central government, UPA government, and it came into effect from 1st Jan 2014, and since then ordinances have been brought forth. 3 ordinances were brought up by the government to ensure that the provisions of this Land Acquisition Act do not come into effect. So after 3 ordinances, eventually the 3rd ordinance was allowed to lapse. The government has framed a bill, an amendment bill to this act, but then that has been passed by Lok Sabha but faces opposition in Rajya Sabha. So what the government wants now, what the Finance Minister Arun Jaitley also said in a Niti Aayog meeting, is that the state government should pass Land Acquisition Acts of how they want it, and that should be referred to the president. So if the president gives its assent to it, then such modifications also prevail. So the idea here is that the jurisdiction of center and state is divided under the constitution in 3 lists. So there's a union list under which union can make laws, state list under which state makes laws, and a concurrent list in which both union and state can make laws. But if a union law is present on the same matter, then union law prevails, not the state law. But then there is an exception given. So this is under Article 254(1), that central law will prevail, but an exception under Article 254(2) says that if the state law receives presidential assent after due consideration, then it can apply in contravention to the central law in that particular state. So this is the provision which the finance minister is now asking states to use to modify the Land Acquisition Act as per their requirements. So actually Land Acquisition Act is very stringent in favor of the public, but then the industries say that they will suffer, land acquisition will become difficult and economy would suffer. So based on such claims, government has brought in ordinances. So we'll discuss about the ordinances and act provisions too. So this is the question here. So this is a constitutional provision. So on the face of it, it is fine, it is doable, but what is the essence of this Article 254(2) is question. So is this constitutionally allowed, which will it pass through the judicial scrutiny, or it will be struck down? That is the question. So one aspect is the question, it says it gives rise to 3 grave jurisprudential concerns. The first one is colorful legislation. So colorful legislation means that what the government cannot do directly, it cannot do indirectly also. So if directly the amendment is not possible, using some other way to ensure that amendment takes place, bypassing the central legislature, the Rajya Sabha, is not possible. So that is colorable legislation. So here that is one aspect which is highlighted. Second aspect highlighted is that presidential assent is not a formality, because it says assent after due consideration. So president has his discretion, he has to use that discretion to ensure that the law is upheld in the true sense, and then it is passed. Because this exception is provided for peculiar conditions in a particular state which requires some differences from the central law which is in force. But what we see in this present case is that the central government is asking all states to pass a law, and that will go to the president for his assent, and the president giving his assent will make these laws enforceable in contravention to the Central Act of 2013. So this is bypassing the Rajya Sabha, they are using this route. So this is what is questioned. So the second aspect is also the presidential assent is not a formality. Due consideration should be used, that is the discretion of the president has to be used in this case to ensure that such conditions prevail and the law is passed. So that is one aspect. And the last aspect is undermining parliament. So that again we discussed that central government lacks the numbers in the Rajya Sabha. So in such a case it cannot use another route and bypass the parliament. So on those grounds this is not acceptable. Now also taking a look at why Land Acquisition Act of 2013 is tried to be bypassed. So the provisions which are there, the former act which was there before 2013 act was a colonial era act of 1894. So in that the provisions of return of land to landowner means if the land is acquired and for 5 years it is not used, then it has to be returned to the landowner. This is a provision in the 2013 act. There is no provision in the former act. Sharing of profits and appreciation. If the acquired land is unused and transferred, then there are rise in prices of lands too. So that aspect also has to be transferred. That is 20% of the profits shall be shared with the original landowner. So this is a provision under the 2013 Act. Then rehabilitation and resettlement. So on that also the 2013 Act says that it is necessary for all affected families that minimum entitlements should be given for resettlement and rehabilitation to all affected families specified. So that is a provision specifically there, which all are missing in the 1894 Act. And then the amendment which has been come forth is this, that there is a requirement for social impact assessment. So every land acquisition done, what will be the social impact assessed, that should be assessed. So that is called an SIA. So that is compulsory in 2013 Act. The ordinance and the amendment which the government wants is that this should not be required if it is for security purpose, defense purpose, for rural infrastructure building, industrial corridors and social infrastructure. So for those aspects it should not be required. Then consent from affected people. So if there is an acquisition done, then consent of 80% of the displaced people is required for acquisition for private companies and PPPs. But then in the amendment, the government wants that this should not be required again for all those 5 sectors. Then another provision on multi-crop land, it says that only in extreme circumstances where multi-crop land has to be acquired at any cost, only 5% of the total multi-crop land in the district can be acquired. So there is a limit to this. And then in the amendment or the modification which present government wants, it says that multi-crop irrigated land can also be acquired again for these 5 sectors. And if you see these 5 sectors, security, defense is fine, rural infrastructure is vaguely termed, industrial corridors is another aspect benefiting the private sector, and social infrastructure. So it is a wide term. Many things can be included under these 5 sectors excluded. So this is the ordinance which has been brought forth by the government, then eventually in August 2015 it has lapsed. So the industry said that it is delaying projects, so social impact assessment and mandatory consent, all this has to be removed. So they don't want to give higher compensation to farmers also for land. So all these exceptions were provided in ordinances. And the important amendments which the 2015 Act which is still pending are also these, that land acquisition only for industrial corridors set up by government will be allowed. So ordinance has included PPP and even private players. The amendment now in front of the parliament says only government industrial corridors. Then land acquired for industrial corridors cannot exceed 1 kilometer on either side of designated rail line or road. So they are making these aspects stringent. Compulsory employment for one member of affected family, that is also provided in the amendment. Then easy to haul up an official below the rank of joint secretary. So if court takes cognizance of any offence by a government employee not adhering to this provisions of this Land Acquisition Act, then they can be brought before the judiciary. So local redressal of complaints also on compensation is required. And social infrastructure projects are now not exempt under the consent clause and the social impact assessment. So social infrastructure has been excluded, which was included earlier. So social infrastructure basically schools, hospitals by private persons. So that cannot be included. So that is about the Land Acquisition Act. The next article which we have picked up for a question is on secularism. So the question is, the constitution did not originally call India secular. The term was inserted by an amendment. Is secularism essential for the democratic fabric of India, or is it highly misused? Discuss. So social and secular, these were the two terms which were inserted by the constitution amendment. They were not originally there. So the term secular was excluded and the term social is because the constitution makers wanted the government later to have the freedom to decide what form of economy they would have. And secularism was also a concept, as at the time of independence and partition, they excluded this term specifically. There's still ambiguity about why this term was not included. It was included during the time of emergency by Indira Gandhi government. And by the 42nd Amendment Act, preamble was amended and these terms were included in the preamble as the objectives of Government of India, of how we want India to be formed. And the 44th Amendment Act, which reverted to the original provisions which was passed by the Janta government after Indira Gandhi government, of which BJP was also a section there. So this Janta government did not remove these provisions. So why the present government is asking that secularism concept has to be excluded is the question. Because they say that since it was not originally there, there is no need for the term secular to be there in the constitution. BJP claims this is a highly misused concept. They say that this has resulted in appeasement of Muslims and it has resulted even in keeping the Muslims poor. So how that is the case is another matter. They say it brings in vote bank politics. It has institutionalized vote bank politics. He also says that the Prime Minister has also said, Narendra Modi, even before election, during the election campaigning in 2014 too, and after being the Prime Minister too, that it has also resulted in Sanskrit not developing. So how Sanskrit has suffered owing to India's so-called secular fever is the statement which he had used. So even Home Minister Rajnath Singh says that secularism is highly misused and the word which is most abused. So that is the aspect. Also BJP and the present government talks of diversity of India and upholding the diversity of India, and there is strength in diversity. But then that diversity cannot be upheld unless secularism is ensured. So secularism basically means non-interference of religion in government matters. We have discussed another independent perspective on Hindutva. So Hindutva is not a religion but a way of life. That was a Supreme Court judgment. So that's what BJP believes in. So rather homogenization or bringing together everybody is what BJP wants. So everybody should follow Hindutva. So that is about secularism. You can write your own answer whether secularism is highly misused or is it essential for preserving the democratic fabric of India. So that is it for today. Thank you. You can download the PDF file for news, editorial and question bank from the website www.aashah.com. Thank you.